Welcome, everyone, to Rock M Radio. This is the beginning of a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. We are live on YouTube for our Rock M Plus subscribers. It's season 8 already. And we're here to talk about your Missouri basketball Tigers. This is the only podcast strictly talking about the Mizzou basketball Tigers. I'm your host, Sam Stilling. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me on your left. Please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. And all that helps this channel grow a bit. If you're accustomed to watching us on YouTube, you may be thinking to yourself, well, this doesn't look like Matt Harris on the right side of the screen. Matt's taken the night off. We gave him some a reprieve with all the end of the season stuff that he's working on. I think he's got a really interesting Tamar Bates piece planned for later this week, and he's going to finish that up. So all good stuff. In his stead, the man, the myth, the legend, the president, and founder of the Dennis Gates fan club. You know him from Southeastern16.com. Blake Lovell. Blake, how are you?
I'm good. And, if you'd have brought me on like 2.5 weeks ago, that founder of the Dennis Gates fan club would have really hit well, I think. Maybe
well,
not
the irony
well
is we did text, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we tried to sync up and it didn't quite work out.
But... I know. Well, I also think Matt probably took the night off thinking, you know what, anytime us three get together, it's at least a 2-hour show. So he was probably thinking, I don't have 2 hours tonight to be able to do this. It's a busy week. I got stuff to do, so I can't blame him.
Well, he's probably watching the end of the SoCon final.
Yeah.
I know. So we're coming live to everybody here. It's Monday night. It's just after 8, and the battle of the SoCon and the Sun Belt are going on right now. It looks like Wofford has a small lead over Furman. In that matchup, I was watching before I came up. Like I was a little salty that I had to leave that game. It was heating up. But
it's always interesting in the SoCon.
Oh, and Troy is up 8 over Arkansas State.
Ooh,
so for anybody who's like, I love championship week. It's a week that I love probably on par, if maybe not even a little bit more than the first week of the NCAA tournament. Like it's nothing but fun basketball from start to finish. But let's get in on these Missouri basketball Tigers, because you've been a long time joiner of our podcast here. We've had you on many times. You've been with us through the ups and the downs. We know all the good and the bad about the Missouri basketball program. And you're right. Like 2-3 weeks ago, this thing looked like it was just heading in the best of directions. Probably the best, finish for a Missouri basketball program since 2012. I liken this team to the 09 team, which would have been like Damari Carroll, Leo Lyons. That's pre-SEC, obviously. But Mike Anderson's best team that was a 3 seed and upset Memphis. Just a really, really fun team, good depth, some young, fun players. That was like Marcus Denman and Kim English and all their freshman year. But I thought there were a lot of similarities with that team. And then like 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, they beat Alabama. And it looked like the sky was the limit for this team. And since then, it's been the opposite. They've lost every game that they played except for the game that they played against South Carolina. Fortunately, that was a home game. Things aren't going well, Blake. What's up with the Tigers?
Yeah, that's the question. It's a bit of a mystery, I think. And, part of me, when I was thinking about this the other day, I'm like, well, did they just sort of hit what a lot of teams hit? And that is, kind of a wall at some point during the season, because even in games that they lost against, a Tennessee on the road, I'm thinking, man, they played well enough to win that game. I didn't come out of that game at all thinking, boy, my opinion has changed on this Missouri team. It was more, hey, I still feel pretty good about this thing. And so I'm thinking, all right, they played well on the road at Tennessee. Didn't win the game, but played well enough to win. Tennessee just had a great offensive game. Look what they did at Mississippi State, the game before that. Now, the Texas game was not great. Win at Florida. And I'm just thinking, all right, then you get to the back half of the schedule, and all right, Georgia, good win on the road against what I think is a improving Georgia team. And then it's like after that, you look at some of these road games, and I'm just thinking, boy, You give up 92 at Arkansas, obviously the overtime game at Vanderbilt, 96 at Oklahoma, and then you come back and give 91 at home to Kentucky. And I mean, it's just like what happened, right? I mean, you can just say, well, it's just obvious. It's the defense just hasn't been there. Um, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's that simple. But I also think mentally, especially with the Vanderbilt game, like I said after that game, like I don't know what that can do for you. If you lose a game the way that they lost that one, like that can sort of impact your psyche a little bit. And then you had to go on the road 5 days later and play a desperate Oklahoma team. And then it's like Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's proven they can beat anybody this year. I mean, they've won a lot of big games, and now Kentucky's about as healthy as they can be. So I'm like, is it all Missouri, or is it, partly look how well Arkansas is playing, look how well Kentucky's playing now they got everybody back. Vanderbilt, I think, even though they've lost their last 2 games, that's still a team that, to me, it probably can win a couple games in the NCAA tournament if they get the right draw.
Well, they were
Oklahoma
coming off
yeah,
beating Texas A&M at Texas A&M at that point.
yeah.
So
So it's like I look at all those, and I think there's a lot of different reasons where it's just the defense certainly hasn't been there. You can't give up as many points because all that does, as you mentioned before we started recording, it just puts way more pressure on you offensively to where you have to hit so many shots. And then you may have a game where you don't hit shots. And so I can't really, explain it other than the fact that it's probably a combination of in this stretch, they've lost to 3 bubble teams. And, that motivation factor for them was very high. But also, they've just not played great defense. And I think if you combine the two together, you're kind of going to get the situation that you're in because, as you said, they were riding high after Alabama. And maybe you do kind of get a little too full of yourself after a game like that. And from there, though, it's just not been pretty. So,
well, and I thought, the thing that about like the Alabama game that stood out is I really think Missouri, for the most part, had flown under the radar. And I mean, I tune into you guys occasionally, so I know like you're going to cover everybody and you're going to hit those. You're going to talk about Missouri and the way that they're playing, but if you were tuning into more of the like the national landscape, like a lot of those writers aren't talking about Missouri, and it really wasn't until they beat Alabama that all of a sudden it was like everybody took a moment and woke up and said, "Oh, okay, like these guys are legit." And you go back and you're like, all right, and you point to all the things that they've done at that point, the beating Kansas, beating Florida, some of these really, really quality road wins at that point. And you're like, all right, like these guys are legit. And you have, Todd Golden, I think was asked about, like who could make a Final Four in the league, and like, he's like, well, the guy, everybody knows about Alabama and Auburn. Nobody's talking about Missouri. And at that point, like the focus shifted, right? And it really felt like, Missouri, who was, they were doing all this stuff, and that's cute, and it works. But at some point, like when you break through, and they had that breakthrough moment when they beat Alabama, and now the attention's on you. And I'm not saying like I don't know if they got full of themselves, if they started reading all the positive press, if they stopped believing in like the don't talk about us kind of thing or whatever. But it, things definitely felt like a shift after that Alabama game. They went on the road and got, beat pretty soundly. I mean, the score wasn't as bad as it was, but I mean, like Arkansas beat them soundly. And you come back, you kind of get right against South Carolina. South Carolina's been horrible on the road. They shoot 2 of 23 from 3-point range. So that inflates the score a little bit worse. But then like you have an opportunity, you're up late, and yeah, you're right. Like, is it deflating when you have control of the game? You have a 6-point lead late, 4-point lead with under a minute to play, and a 3-point lead with 3 seconds to play. and you give up an open look. You know what I mean? Like it's not even like a desperation shot that goes in. It's not, Caleb Love chucking it from 3-quarter court, to beat Texas Tech. It's their best 3-point shooter, getting a clean look from 22 feet. So, I do wonder if maybe that sunk them a little bit, and then you go
Yeah.
on a road and have to play Oklahoma, who's you beaten by 24 points. Maybe you don't come out with with the level of respect that you should have for a team that's still fighting for an NCAA tournament berth, but it's been frustrating to watch because they've been so much fun to watch all year, and they just don't look like the same team.
No, and I think too, like, I was just looking up the records. I was trying to think like some of these teams, like, Kentucky finishes 3-1 in their final 4 games in the regular season. Oklahoma finishes 3-2 in their final 5 games in the regular season. Vanderbilt finishes, what is it, 3-2 in their final, 5 games to finish the season. And so I'm like, they're playing teams like that who certainly, had good finishes. Arkansas 4-1 in their last 5 games, to finish the regular season. So I think that's certainly part of it is the fact that you're just playing teams that, like I said, I think they've kind of hit that point where maybe Missouri was in that stretch a little bit earlier, where they were having some of those hot streaks. These are kind of teams that you feel like are at times hitting some of those hot streaks. I don't know if I'd call Oklahoma necessarily on a hot streak, but I say that, right? They lost by a point at
But
home to
yeah,
Kentucky, lost by 3 on the road at Ole Miss.
right.
So
And only
I
only
don't
six
know.
to Mississippi, or they beat Mississippi State before that.
Yeah. So it's like I think that's part of it. And I think maybe it's a portion of it that maybe isn't getting enough of that average of like, okay, is it, 40%, 40, 60, whatever you think. But I think that has something to do with it because it would be different to me if, let's say, Missouri was losing these games by 15 or something or more, right? Now, I know they lost the Oklahoma one by 12, but the point is, if they're getting blown out, it's different than maybe just losing some close games and being frustrated at how you're losing these games. And I think, like you said, and that was really the first thing I thought after the Vanderbilt game, I was like, oh boy, this is one loss, but man, this is one of the, and I called it, I said, this is the most disappointing loss of the season. You can say, well, hey, we'd have loved to beat Illinois. We'd have loved to win, the game at Texas was disappointing and all that. But to me, the Vanderbilt game was the most disappointing. And then what happened? They probably followed it up with their second most disappointing loss of the season right after that against Oklahoma. And so I think that is, to me, the thing where I'm just thinking, okay, you get into the SEC tournament this week, you start fresh. It's the strongest conference ever, Ken Palm ratings, all this other stuff. You get away from the SEC teams next week. How does that, is that a good thing? I would think it's going to be for a lot of these SEC teams, just getting away from each other, knowing, that they just beat up on each other every year. But this year has been so different. And so I think we'll learn a lot. I mean, I don't know how much we'll learn about teams this week in Nashville, but I do think we'll learn a lot about Missouri this week because I think they have a path, right, where they've beaten Mississippi State, they've beaten LSU, they've beaten Florida, they've beaten Alabama. So the teams that are in their path to try to get to Saturday or Sunday, they've proven this year that they can beat them. And so can you find that same thing that you had then, or do we see more of the same? Because I just think that's kind of the setup for them heading into this week.
I'd also like to point out, and I think this is a good sort of spot to sort of pivot for us into the SEC tournament and like the league in general and what it's done to a lot of good basketball teams.
Yeah.
The AP poll came out today, and I always kind of posted in the Rock and Plus forums and like, all right, here's all the teams that you need to know about. Here's the SEC teams. There's anybody that Missouri played. I noticed that Clemson was 10th. And why I found that interesting, Blake, is because if you go to kenpom.com, which is a pretty prominent statistical website for college basketball fans, Missouri is 20th and 19th is Clemson. So we all know that the struggles of the ACC this year. This is like Clemson's closing stretch. They did beat Duke. Good job for you. That was in early February. They beat 37th in Ken Palm, North Carolina at home On the road at Florida State, 87. On the road at SMU, 52. At home against 93rd Notre Dame. On the road at Virginia, 103 in Ken Palm. On the road at Boston College, 183 in Ken Palm. And at home to finish off the season against Virginia Tech at 155 in Ken Palm. You had 4 games of sub 75 opponents, 5 of sub 50 opponents. And then if you flip back, and I'm just going to use Missouri since this is a Missouri podcast as an example. South Carolina is 69th in Ken Palm. The teams that they lost to, 11, Kentucky. Kentucky got bumped up significantly by beating Missouri. I think they were around 16 or 17 before that game. But Kentucky, credit to them. They're also looking like a team that's probably about like a 3 seed at this point. Oklahoma's 38, Vanderbilt's 45. I mean, 45 on the road, not an easy game. Arkansas 40. Again, like South Carolina 69 is their one win. Essentially, like Clemson had like 5 South Carolinas lined up down the stretch, and like this is again kind of getting into like the challenge and sort of what the SEC teams face. Like, how much of this is going to be, and at least this is asking for your take on this. How much do you think it's going to benefit them to get away from other SEC teams versus the brutality of the league from the start of January to mid-March, including the conference tournament, and having to go through that gauntlet will mentally and physically wear some teams down to where they might underperform the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, so we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and people were not happy with my take on. I'm like, can we just find a way to let some of these teams just sit this one out? Like, can we just say, all right, we're going to draw some names out of the hat with the top, whatever seeds, and we're just going to say, all right, you teams get to take this week off. I'm half joking, but it's like we all know the SEC tournament at this point. If you're Auburn, if you're these other teams at the top, you're not playing for anything other than trying to win a conference championship, which is great. I mean, we should all play to win. I understand, but I still look at it from that standpoint because I'm sitting there, right, 10 feet away last year, and I see Micah Logden go down, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, well, there went that. And, and I know injuries are part of the game, but I do think there is something to the idea that, boy, going through the grueling, any year is, we say that in the SEC, but this year it's like this year could be completely different, right? I know we're going to talk about the bracket in a minute. That's why I think the bracket's so fascinating when you look at the differences between the top and the bottom. But, it's also something where I do think some of these teams will benefit just from getting away from each other. Whereas, do I trust any of these ACC teams necessarily that have not played anyone in a month or more? Like, not really. I don't care what their record is. To me, it's just an inflated record, right? There's a difference between Auburn being 27-4 and Clemson being 26-5. I think there's a big gap there. And so I feel like it's one where for SEC teams, to me, the thing is always, like you said, it's the grind of the past couple months and how that impacts you, especially if you play 2 or 3 games in the tournament this week too. But it's also always goes back to how the game's going to be officiated. And I think that's where the SEC teams get hurt a lot. And I wonder if a team like Missouri, who gets to the free throw line, Alabama, Texas A&M, the perfect example, Georgia, these are teams that get to the line. Like, that's where, again, it comes down to matchups and how these games are called, because I know it sounds like, people are like, oh, it's just an excuse. No, if you're like us and you see all these SEC games, you see the difference sometimes in how they're officiated versus what an NCAA tournament game can look like. And, I think that's going to play a factor for some of these teams. And so there's a lot of combustible elements here to where we all know what's going to happen if the SEC comes out and there are 4 teams in the Sweet 16 and not, 7. Like, it's just going to be, oh, okay, well, it's just another average year. But, I'm curious because I think, again, there are probably at least 4 teams that can not just make the Final Four, but maybe win a national championship. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, it is one of those things where, and I kind of go back and forth on it. Like, on one hand, does it prepare you? On the other, though, like, you look at Auburn last year. I mean, Auburn finished the league 13-5, won the conference tournament, gets upset in the first round against Yale. And yeah, like, I do wonder, if, like, you want to get in and you want to have, like, maybe a good game. For Missouri, I think it would, like, I really think it would benefit them to win one, and be very good and competitive in another. Take
Yeah.
a close loss and then go recoup. If so, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this up on the screen so people can kind of see it. So here's the bracket. So Mizzou, if they get LSU, Mississippi State, they would face Florida. If they were to beat Florida, they would probably be looking at Alabama, possibly a rematch with Kentucky. And like, I don't know how much you're able to gain, seeding wise, NCAA tournament wise, like, once you kind of get past the semis or even the quarters, is it something like, if you reach the championship game, is the committee going to suddenly anoint you a 5 seed? Probably
No.
not. So, like, if you win one and are competitive in two, does that, because I think right now they're kind of hovering in that 6-7 line. Like, I think it'd be beneficial for them to try to get to the 6.
Yeah.
That way you're not facing a 2 seed. But I don't, if Missouri's playing well, I don't know that I necessarily, think it matters all that much if they play a 2 seed or a 3 seed. I mean, anybody sort of sitting on that 2 line or 3 line that isn't in the SEC will have to, get used to how Missouri plays. And maybe that's an overconfident way of looking at it. But, again, I think we're talking about the best version of the Tigers, which we haven't admittedly seen the last few weeks.
Well, I think we've seen that the committee just doesn't. I think it doesn't mean anything. I think for the bubble teams, this week will mean something, just because you have a couple that are sitting there. I mean, I don't see Vanderbilt as a bubble team anymore. I don't see Georgia as a bubble team. I think they're in. Arkansas, maybe still close, but I tend to think that we know how this works, right? If you're telling me Arkansas is one of those last teams as a possibility versus someone else, and you're going to give the NCAA tournament John Calipari in Arkansas and Dayton in the first 4, I think they'll take that scenario over picking one of the Mountain West teams or something like that. So I think Arkansas's in. Now, again, a second loss to South Carolina in a matter of 10 days or whatever, it's probably not ideal. But
yeah,
like we said earlier, it's not like South Carolina is one of the bottom 6 or 7 teams in the ACC. Like, they're not there in the metrics, so it's not that bad of a loss, all things considered. And so, I mean, last year, I remember we're sitting there, doing our selection show when they revealed the bracket, and we had just watched Auburn and Florida in the championship game. We're thinking, all right, well, these 2 teams just did something for their seeding, right? Then their seeding came up and nothing. Didn't change a thing.
Yeah,
that
Auburn
both of them got
was
to
a 4.
Yeah. I think, what was it, Auburn 4 or 5? And
I think
Florida
was
a 7. Yeah. And we were thinking, all right, well, yeah, Florida definitely jumped up, didn't move an inch. And so I think that's it. Like, to me, anything that happens after Friday, or anything that happens after Thursday, probably is the better way to put it. I just don't think it matters. And so, like you said, I think if you're Missouri, you grab a win on Thursday, great. But anything beyond that, I just don't think it's going to impact their seeding whatsoever, just because that's sort of the precedent that the committee has seemed to set. And it feels like Texas A&M is always the example of that, because it feels like, they're the one that a couple years ago they were making the runs and we're thinking, all right, oh, this is great. Vanderbilt made that run that one year and everybody's like, all right, they're in. They got to be in. They were nowhere close. And it's just like, I mean, they weren't even in the first 4 out. And so it's like,
yeah.
I think we completely overestimate the committee, thinking that they're going to, and look, there's part of me, I get it, because I've been that guy where I'm like, listen, it's the full body of work. I mean, it's not just what you and that's why, someone sent me a message the other day and they're like, how do you view this Auburn team if they don't win the national championship? Let's say they get to the Final Four and or whatever, Elite Eight, and they don't win the national championship. I'm like, well, we all know how everybody's going to view it, right? They're not going to be viewed as a team that they had a great regular season, but they couldn't get it done in tournament time. And I'm like, and people are going to really just say, well, they were overrated. And I'm like, how can you tell me a team was overrated when in 30 something games, this is what they did? And then in, 2 or 3 games, they just happened to lose by 2 points or 3 points or whatever. Like, it's backwards mentally, but I understand why we do it. And so, yeah, like to me, the SEC tournament, I love it, but the NCAA tournament committee, it just means less and doesn't just mean more. It just means less. It seems like each year we do this thing. So yeah.
Well, let's break it down a little bit. Because I do think the new format does lend for definitely more intrigue in the early stages. Previous format of 14 teams, you had 2 games on Wednesday. And so really like the irony here is we used to sort of have the mark of if your season was bad, you were playing in Wednesday, right? That used to be the marker. And now you've got like, possibly 4, as probably 4 teams who are likely to be NCAA tournament teams with another possibility of maybe 1 playing on Wednesday. So there's a big difference between the Wednesday games of yesteryear and this year. Of those first round games, what's the one that you're watching the most?
Yeah, to me, I think it's Vanderbilt and Texas because I think that row of games with Tennessee as the 4, Texas A&M as the 5, and then Vanderbilt, Texas. To me, that feels like the one that could cause the most chaos in the bracket. Just because I think there's a lot of
through. Like they've already beaten A&M. That's a tough matchup.
They've beaten all those teams. Yeah. Like I think that's to me is what's interesting because I look at Vandy and I'm like, all right, they've beaten these teams, every single one of them that are right there paired with them. And then I'm thinking, well, Texas has given me no reason to be confident in them, but I also know that the law of probability tells me that Trey Johnson's probably not going to go 0-14 on Wednesday, and he could go off, and he could go off again because Texas played not too badly against Texas A&M. I think they beat them in that game with the buzzer or whatever. So I'm like, that could get interesting, right? Because Texas has something to play for, and we said it. Motivation has won out these past couple weeks, and so maybe Texas finally puts it all together. And then I'm like, well, I've seen this story with A&M before, right? And I'm just thinking, all right, they could shoot 100 free throws between Thursday and Friday and advance to the semifinals. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think Vanderbilt, Texas is most interesting to me because I think no matter which pairing you get against A&M, I think it's a fascinating game. And then I think whoever wins that, I could pick Tennessee to win this thing, or I could pick Tennessee to lose to probably either A&M or Vanderbilt. I don't know that I would pick them to lose against Texas, but again, we've seen kind of what those potential matchups could be. So I think that's the one. I mean, to me, number 2 is, I feel like I should say Arkansas, South Carolina, but I'm like, this isn't in Columbia, and I just think it's going to be a different game. But like that Georgia-Oklahoma game is interesting too because Oklahoma's right there, and I think Georgia is a team I was really down on. But like, I love the way they're playing right now, and so I don't know that they beat Oklahoma and then go beat Kentucky, but would I be shocked? No.
I mean, they did beat a healthier version of Kentucky earlier this year too.
Yep, beat them both.
So yeah, I think I'm with you on the Texas angle. For anybody who doesn't pay as much attention as you and I do on a night by night basis, Oklahoma beat Texas at Texas the other night, and that was the last SEC regular season game. And Trey Johnson went 0-14. And he had, even like late, there was a play that, like he was driving to the basket and just laid it up, and the ball just like rimmed right out. And you could just see like in his body language. And like, he's a young player, so he's going to show his emotions a lot more maybe than some more experienced guys. But he's a kid who plays with his his energy and his effort. All that's on his sleeve. You see it, and that was deflating. So, but he's a competitor, and it would not surprise me to see him come out and like drop 40 points.
Yeah.
On Vanderbilt. So that's a really intriguing matchup. Um, I we this is a safe space podcast for Mike White skeptics. Um, and if Matt Harris ends up listening to this, he's probably the biggest Mike White skeptic of us all. I've always found like White to be at worst like competent, right? Like he's not a bad coach. I don't know that he's necessarily like, he's not going to be like Nate Oates or Bruce Pearl and lift a rough and tumble program into the top five. But he's a good coach. I did not think he would be able to get them to 8-10 this year, especially like once. Let's see, yeah. So they were 4-9 after Missouri left, heading to Auburn. And so you're staring 4-10 in the face, and then coming back with Florida coming into your building, and then they got Florida, and was that Mike's first win over Florida since he took the Georgia job?
I think so. Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah. So and then like as much of a break as you can get in the SEC, they get a break. They get Texas, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Three teams that they're all quality teams, but they're towards the bottom in the KenPom ratings in the league, and to finish 8-10, I think is pretty miraculous. Jeremiah Fears, though, like that kid, he's so capable of taking over games, and when he's going well, and Oklahoma is making threes, I mean, there's a reason they beat Arizona and Louisville, and let's see, it was Arizona, Louisville, and Michigan, right? Was all the three teams they beat in the non-con. Like that, they're a quality team. I don't know if Godwin's going to be available. I think that takes them down, especially with how sort of physical and Georgia can be up front. But that's also an intriguing game.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing is like I could see the winner of both those two games like beating the next team, like A&M or Kentucky, just because we see that a lot. I mean, those teams that get going early and you get the teams who have just kind of been sitting for several days and, maybe it more so affects the teams on Friday. But yeah, like I think those two games are great for, like you said, the expanded format here. I mean, I think every game's compelling. Maybe I don't think Mississippi State LSU is that compelling. I think the other three are. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a great start in terms of the matchups and the potential for the winners to win another game, even with the Arkansas, angle. I think if they beat South Carolina, I think there are going to be some people that maybe have them the favorite as against Ole Miss. So,
you think Cam Carter's got enough to take down Mississippi State, or the Bulldogs going to advance in that one?
Well, but that's the thing. It's like Mississippi State, I think, is the most confusing team in the league, and I'm just, I don't know what you're getting from them on a, media timeout by media timeout basis. Like every 4 minutes, I just don't know. And so, but I also know that LSU is just, they've been one player away all season long, and maybe that's just as simple as losing Jalen Reed when they did. But I mean, Corey Chest has been out, Victorious Miller's been out, so I don't think it sets up great for LSU.
My favorite stat about Mississippi State, Chris Jans, 8-10 finishes 3 years in a row now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason I picked them to go 8-10 before the season started.
That makes sense now.
I figured.
I'll tell you,
I'm going to take those odds.
what I didn't pick, and I've said many times, like this is the most shocking stat maybe of the year for me, team stat. Mississippi State is allowing teams to shoot 37% from three. I'm like, I know like Chris Jans' style, and that just blows my mind that they have allowed that kind of percentage, knowing that really, like last year they were top 10 in that category. He's always had teams that have been good there, and they have just been awful at defending the three this year.
Yeah.
Which is why I like the matchup in the next round, by the way, against Missouri. So, yeah.
Well, so in the next round, we'll kind of do some quicker hitters here. Of the teams that have a single bye, so Ole Miss, Texas A&M,
Mm-hmm.
Missouri, Kentucky, who do you think is the best shot in your eyes, not statistically, but but to make it to the championship game or even win a championship?
It's probably A&M. Like I've seen them in this setting before, have we not? I mean, I feel like since Buzz has gotten there, they just always find a way in tournament play to win games. And, again, and we think about the matchups and the potential whoever, Vanderbilt or Texas. Like, yeah, we've seen both those teams beat them, but they just seem to hit a next level in these kind of tournament games. And I think, if you're A&M and you're looking at the matchups against all the other teams, 1 through 4, I think Tennessee is probably the one you enjoy the most. I mean, I know they just beat Auburn, but I don't think you want Auburn right now, in my opinion. So I think A&M gets the team they probably want the most in Tennessee, because I think it's the team that plays the closest to the way they play. And so I feel like it's probably a scenario where I can see A&M honestly making it all the way to the championship. Kentucky's interesting just because we've seen them win so many big games, but I also am like, Alabama's had their number. I just think Florida would have their number right now if the two teams played, and that's my problem. Maybe if Florida was there, I could say, all right, well, I've seen Kentucky's path to beating Florida this year, but Alabama's just kind of had Kentucky's number, and so I don't know that I love that matchup for them, even with how much blue would be there, in the game, in the arena, but I'd probably go A&M. And as we said earlier, if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I probably would have said Missouri, just based on the fact that those bottom 4, when did I put the stat out yesterday? Top part of the bracket, scoring defense, the top 4 teams in the top part of the bracket are allowing like 67 points per game. The bottom 4 teams in the bracket are averaging like 87 points a game. Yeah. And it's just like, what a contrast you have between these two. Now, obviously, you have like Auburn and Florida who are, top 10-ish in both, but these matchups, I hope we get, chalk on Friday, especially in the bottom part of the bracket, because I don't know how you could ask for 2 more entertaining games than those 2 potentially.
So, then turning to your, your double buys, are you going to put your money against Auburn? Coming off back-to-back losses. Has the season caught up to them is the question, Blake.
So I won't spoil it, but Max and I did our our full bracket picks that we're putting out for our members tomorrow. And I guess by the I can kind of give it away.
Well, so this is live for our subscribers only.
Yeah. Okay. So
tomorrow,
this works out well.
Yeah, you'll probably be okay.
It works out well. So I went into the bracket choice, filling out every game, thinking that I was not going to have Auburn even advancing, past Saturday. And ultimately, though, I changed my mind and I talked myself into it, because I'm like, 2 weeks ago, I was saying, hey, Auburn, run a 12-man rotation on Friday, maybe throw a couple more guys in there and just, all right, just kind of maybe go through the motions. We're not trying to lose here, but, wouldn't be the worst thing if you get beat on Friday. Right. Now I'm almost like, they've got us right where they want us, don't they? Because they lost the last 2 games, which quite honestly didn't mean anything for them. They did for pride and all this other stuff that we will make a big deal about, but they didn't really mean anything. And now I see them dropping to number 3 in the AP poll. Everybody's saying that, Auburn is broken and all this other stuff. And I'm sitting here like, wait a minute. Is somebody out for the season? Did they get multiple injuries? It's the same team that we've seen put together one of the most ridiculous resumes we've ever seen. And I'm just like, to me, that is all Bruce Pearl needs to get them ready to just do this again. And so I did in our bracket. I took them all the way to the championship, and I had them winning it. And I did not think I would do that, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, you just put this on a platter for Bruce Pearl. All the stuff that's being said out there, Duke should be the number one overall seed now. All this stuff, and I just think they will thrive in that. And I also think it's bracket too. I just think they match up well against Ole Miss or Arkansas or South Carolina, right? If you had that, I just don't think that's, to me, they're the team that looks to be the least threatened by their part of the bracket. Whereas we mentioned with Tennessee, Florida could have a Missouri again, who's already beaten them. Kentucky could get hot and beat Alabama. Like, there's just all these things. And so I would probably still put Auburn there. Now, the question is, who are they going to play at the bottom? Because it's hard not to pick Florida, right? I think Florida's playing better than anybody in the country not named Duke. And, but Alabama, they just went and won this game. What's that going to do for their confidence? So it's just, good luck. I don't know how this thing plays out this week.
Yeah, I would also say the odds of Auburn winning are drastically higher if Chad Baker-Mazara can avoid getting ejected from the basketball game.
That's true.
I think I had just kind of stepped out, and so I kind of missed that he got ejected from that game. So I was watching the end and wasn't even thinking about it. And then I saw the replay and oh, and Baker-Mazara got ejected for an elbow to the back of the head. And you're like, of course he did. That I will say, he is so valuable to them, and as much as the antics drive me crazy, I'm an anti-antics guy. It drives me crazy to watch him, but he is so valuable to what they do. Somebody needs to have a conversation with him. We want you to play with that edge, but buddy, you cannot be getting kicked out of these games. And then they lose in overtime, to really, look, credit to Alabama. They played really well, but it was an overtime game. Anybody could have won that game coming down the stretch. It was tied at the end. Mark Sears makes a great shot, and you're missing, at worst, your third most important player, probably second most important player behind Broome. He's got to find a way to make sure that he's staying in these games. If he's playing, I think they probably win that game.
Yeah, I think it sets up. I think the motivation level for them sets up way different than what I thought it was going to be, and that's why not just because they're the number one seed, but I think they're the most interesting team, of the group here, because I want to see how they respond to this, because we've not seen this team in this position all season long, and to me, I'm like, I've seen Bruce Pearl teams play with a chip on their shoulder, and that's why they were so successful early in the season once they started racking up those non-conference wins and all that. So I just, or maybe Florida's just going to keep doing this, and this is going to be one where they just roll through everybody and they go win the national championship. I don't know, but we'll see.
You want to get into any NCAA tournament predictions before we get out of here?
The number I've stayed with is 12.
You think?
Because
12?
I just think that, to me, Texas has an uphill climb at this point. And I think Arkansas is in. I just don't know if Oklahoma or Texas get in.
It will be incredible to watch a 6-12 basketball team.
I know.
Play in the NCAA tournament. I think it's possible. Oklahoma's got some really quality wins, particularly in non-conference. That's a lot to carry, though. And I know the committee will say they don't look at conference records. And that's kind of been a big point for them to not look at conference records. I think if either of those teams gets to 7, they're probably safer. But yeah, and really, if Oklahoma was at 7, Texas, I think, probably need to get to 8. And we'll see.
I don't know. For some reason, I just tend to think that they're going to find a way to get left out. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but because the teams they're going up against, right? I just don't see a scenario where Texas jumps North Carolina. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm I think the committee would put North Carolina in over Texas.
Well, and
I don't.
as a bit of a basketball purist, I also I do object a little bit to the idea that, and I realize the SEC has been a gauntlet, and that should be taken into account. But if you can't win, more than one out of every 3 games,
Yeah.
uh, against your peers, why should you be in the tournament when,
Okay.
I would rather see, I don't know, put Bradley in. I'd rather see Bradley or,
Yeah.
who just got bounced from the SoCon,
Yeah.
Arkansas State. Who ended up winning that game?
It was Troy ended up winning. Yeah. So
Troy won. I'd rather see Arkansas State.
Hey, I'd rather give me UC San Diego and UC Irvine both in, and it's a shame
Hey,
that one of them's going to get left out.
I love me some Big West, man.
I do too. I tell everybody that's my second favorite conference, and I'm not joking when I say that. I love those coaches out there. I think they do a great job, and I think it's a fun brand of basketball that Russell Turner runs at UC Irvine. What San Diego's done is tremendous. CSUN's turned it around. UC Santa Barbara's been great under Pasternak. I know they weren't as good this year, but I love it.
And Bent Loyston is a former Rockin' Plus subscriber.
Really? Now there's a fact. I did not know that. Wow.
We always joke about it a little bit because I mean, at least that's the name on the account that signed up. No, we I think it was Missouri was looking at him, and so we posted some deep dives on Bent. And I think he must have seen it on social media and gave us a shot. So we appreciate the subscription. He has since canceled, but
that's okay. Listen, I remember talking that when I was doing Blue Ribbon, the Blue Ribbon yearbook, I was covering the Big West for him, and I remember talking to Russell Turner about him, and he was like, "Yeah, he's like, this guy's going to wind up being a player for us," and that was honestly before his freshman season, and I'm like, now I look up and I'm thinking, yeah, he was right. So
yeah. I don't know how he would have held up in the SEC, but he's been terrific for them. I'm sure we're losing viewers left and right with this Big West conference.
What if Missouri draws San Diego? Then you got to be ready for it. Okay. You don't. I hope not. Listen. I hope they don't, because I think that's not a team I'd want to see. But yeah.
Well, we're gonna let you get out of here. I know we wanted to kind of get this at about 45 and hop off. Let's plug your site, and then we'll cut this off. So southeastern16.com. Obviously, the YouTube channel is the big deal, though.
I mean, it's okay. I don't know how big of a deal it is, but it's we have fun there. Southeastern 16 on YouTube. We'll be live every day, probably multiple days or multiple times during the day during the SEC tournament. So we'll be there, and it should be a lot of fun. And of course, we'll have just as I'm sure you guys will be doing, our big selection marathon stream we do for the bracket on Sunday. So fun week coming up, and you can check it all out there.
Yeah, so if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll make sure we have a link to their YouTube page as well, so you can go easily be subscribed. The amount of content that you guys put out on a regular basis is extensive. If you're a fan of Southeastern Conference, any Southeastern Conference team, it's definitely a recommended follow. And it's on my list, so I check you guys out. And I usually skip over whenever you're talking and just want to hear what the other guys are saying.
Well, that makes sense. Usually
I know what you're going to say, Blake.
Well, usually I'm just the person that's on there, trying to get money. I'm either doing ads or trying to get super chats. And so, I mean, I'm kind of playing the, I don't know what I am at this point. The telethon guy. I don't know. So I talk basketball too, though. So
taking the calls. Yeah. But baseball, football, you guys got it all covered. So head over there, check it out. Blake, thanks for hopping on, man. Appreciate it. Enjoy your Nashville viewing. Right down the road from you, and being able to hop over there to Bridgestone Arena and check out the best conference in basketball. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back. I don't know if we're going to go Sunday night or Monday night, but we'll be back next week to talk NCAA tournament. Give this dude a follow and support his work. All right. Thanks everybody. Thank you everyone for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. We'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.